You know those moments when someone you love says something that sticks with you forever? For me, it happened on my birthday. My sister leaned in and whispered, "Our family is ashamed that you use our last name." I don't think I've ever felt so small. And I know I'm not alone. So many of us carry words from family that we never asked for, but can't forget. This video isn't just about my story. It's about understanding why families sometimes hurt the ones they're supposed to protect. And I promise, by the end, you'll see this in a way you've never thought about before. Birthdays always carried this quiet promise for me, a chance to reset, to feel celebrated, to believe for one day that everything was okay. That evening, the house was buzzing. Balloons lined the walls, the cake sat waiting with its candles, and the chatter of cousins and friends filled the room. I remember thinking, this is exactly how it should be. The music was light, people were laughing, and I was soaking it all in. My mom was busy making sure everyone had food, my cousins were joking around, and I was just standing there, feeling like the center of something good. For once, I wasn't worried about work or family drama or anything else. It was just my birthday, and I was ready to blow out those candles. That's the thing about moments like these, they feel so ordinary, so safe. And maybe that's why what happened next hit me so hard. Because when you're surrounded by warmth, you don't expect the cold to come from someone standing right beside you. I leaned forward, ready to blow out the candles, when my sister stepped closer. Her voice was low, almost casual, but the words cut through the noise of the room like glass. "Our family is ashamed that you use our last name." At first, I thought I misheard her. The music was still playing, people were still laughing, but inside my head everything went silent. It was like the entire room froze, even though no one else seemed to notice. That's the strange thing about moments like this. The world keeps moving, but inside time stops. It wasn't just the sentence. It was the way she said it. No hesitation, no apology, no softness. Just a flat declaration, like she was delivering a verdict. And in that instant, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I stared at the cake, the candles flickering, and a thought hit me. Do they all feel this way? Because when someone speaks with that kind of certainty, it doesn't sound like one person's opinion. It sounds like a collective judgment. That's the danger of words like that. They don't just come from one person. They make you question everyone around you. Psychologists call this a shame trigger. It's when a single phrase taps into your deepest fear of rejection. And families know exactly which words carry the most weight. A stranger could never hurt me with that sentence. But coming from my sister, it felt like she was pulling the ground out from under me. That moment wasn't just awkward. It was seismic. It was the start of a fracture I didn't see coming. A crack that would spread through every conversation, every silence, every glance in the days that followed. The words were still ringing in my ears, but the party didn't stop. People kept talking. The music kept playing. Yet everything felt different. It was like the air in the room had shifted. My cousin laughed at something on his phone, but it sounded hollow. My mom glanced at me, then quickly looked away, as if she didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. I stayed frozen, staring at the candles. My chest felt tight, and I couldn't bring myself to blow them out. It's strange. Something as simple as making a wish suddenly felt impossible. Because what do you wish for when your own family just told you they're ashamed of you? The silence between me and my sister was louder than the music. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her why. I just stood there, trying to process whether this was her opinion alone, or if she had spoken for everyone in the room. That's the danger of moments like this. They don't just hurt, they plant doubt. And doubt spreads fast. I remember thinking, if I say something now, will it make things worse? Or will it finally expose what everyone else has been hiding? That hesitation kept me quiet, but inside, the questions were already multiplying. That night, when the house was quiet and the guests had gone, I finally had space to hear my own thoughts. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. Our family is ashamed that you use our last name. It was like a broken record I couldn't turn off. I kept asking myself, was she speaking for herself or for everyone? The silence of the party had already planted doubt, but now, alone in my room, the doubt grew louder. I thought about every family gathering, every subtle look, every offhand comment I might have missed. Suddenly, they all felt like clues pointing to the same conclusion. I grabbed a notebook and started writing. Not even sentences at first, just fragments. Ashamed. Last name. Family. It was messy, but it was the only way I could untangle the knot in my chest. Later, I learned psychologists call this rumination, the cycle of replaying painful events until they consume you. And that's exactly what I was doing. At one point, I asked myself, am I really a disgrace? Or is this about her own insecurities? That question stuck with me, because when someone throws shame at you, it's hard to tell whether it belongs to you or to them. That night, I didn't find an answer, but I did realize one thing. Words don't just end when they're spoken. They echo, and sometimes the echo is louder than the original sound. The morning after my birthday, I woke up hoping it had all been a misunderstanding. But the silence was real. My phone, usually buzzing with leftover birthday wishes, stayed quiet. No follow-up calls, no cheerful texts. Just silence. By the weekend, the changes became impossible to ignore. My aunt, who never missed a chance to check in, skipped calling. My cousins, who usually tag me in family group chats, suddenly stopped. Even my mom's tone shifted, shorter, more careful, like she was measuring every word before speaking. It wasn't dramatic. No one confronted me directly. But that's the thing about family tension. It doesn't always scream, it whispers. And those whispers can be louder than words. Every skipped call, every awkward pause, every cold smile felt like confirmation that my sister hadn't spoken just for herself. At dinner one night, I noticed the difference most clearly. The clinking of plates filled the silence where laughter used to be. My dad asked about work, but his eyes didn't meet mine. My mom passed me the bread without saying a word. It was subtle, but it was unmistakable. The warmth I'd always associated with family had been replaced by distance. Psychologists call this social withdrawal, when groups quietly exclude someone without open confrontation. It's a way of signaling disapproval while avoiding direct conflict. And sitting there at that dinner table, I realized I was living inside that dynamic. It wasn't just about a last name anymore. It was about belonging. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I still did. After days of silence, I couldn't keep carrying the weight alone. The questions were piling up, and every unanswered call from family felt like proof that something bigger was happening behind the scenes. So I decided to confront it head on. I picked up my phone, typed out a message to my sister, and kept it simple. Can we talk? My thumb hovered over the send button longer than I'd like to admit. Because in that moment, I wasn't just asking for a conversation, I was asking for clarity, for a chance to prove that her words weren't the whole truth. The reply came back almost instantly. No, just 2 letters, but they hit harder than the sentence she'd said on my birthday. That no wasn't just rejection. It was finality. It was her way of saying, this isn't up for discussion. I sat there staring at the screen, debating whether to push back. Should I call her? Should I show up at her door? But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. She wasn't interested in resolution. She wanted distance. And sometimes, distance speaks louder than confrontation. Psychologists call this stonewalling, when someone refuses to engage, shutting down communication entirely. It's one of the most damaging behaviors in relationships, because it doesn't just block dialogue, it blocks healing. And that's exactly what I felt in that moment, a wall being built brick by brick, with every unanswered question sealed inside. That night, I realized something important. Silence isn't neutral. It's a choice. And when someone chooses silence over conversation, they're not just avoiding conflict. They're declaring that the relationship itself isn't worth saving. That realization hurt almost as much as her original words, because it meant the fracture wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Weeks passed, and the silence didn't break. I realized I couldn't keep replaying the same moment in my head without trying to understand it. So I did what I always do when I feel lost. I started digging. I read articles on family dynamics, shame, and identity. One study I found explained that shame is often used in families as a tool of control. Psychologists call it a social regulator, a way to keep people in line by making them feel guilty for stepping outside tradition. That hit me hard, because suddenly my sister's words weren't just personal, they were part of a bigger pattern. I learned that in many cultures, last names aren't just identifiers. They're symbols of honor, reputation, and legacy. Rejecting or misusing that name can be seen as betrayal. And when someone feels you've betrayed the family image, shame becomes the weapon of choice. I even came across examples of public figures who changed their names to escape family expectations. Some were celebrated for it, others were condemned. That contrast made me realize the weight of a name depends entirely on the people who carry it. The more I read, the clearer it became. My sister's sentence wasn't just about me. It was about her fear of how I represented the family. And instead of talking about it, she chose the shortcut, shame. Understanding that didn't erase the pain, but it gave me perspective. It showed me that her words were less about my worth and more about her need for control. Understanding the psychology behind shame gave me perspective, but it didn't erase the weight I was carrying. I needed ways to cope, to stop replaying that sentence in my head every night. So I started small. I picked up my notebook again, but this time I wrote full letters I never sent. I poured out everything I wanted to say, the anger, the confusion, the hurt. Studies show that expressive writing helps people process trauma by organizing thoughts and reframing painful events. And honestly, it worked. Each page felt like I was pulling the poison out of my system. I also reached out to a close friend, someone outside the family. Talking to them gave me perspective I couldn't get on my own. They reminded me that shame often says more about the person who delivers it than the one who receives it. That conversation was like a reset button. It reminded me I wasn't alone. Eventually, I even tried therapy. Sitting across from someone trained to listen without judgment was different. My therapist explained how shame operates like a mirror. It reflects the insecurities of the person projecting it. That insight changed everything. It meant my sister's words weren't proof of my failure. They were evidence of her fear. Bit by bit, these actions helped me reclaim control. Journaling gave me release, conversations gave me support, and therapy gave me clarity. And together, they built a foundation strong enough to carry me past that moment. Months went by, and the silence became the new normal. At first, I kept waiting for things to go back to how they were, for my sister to call, for family dinners to feel warm again. But the more I waited, the more I realized that waiting was just another way of giving her words power. So I stopped. I stopped expecting apologies, stopped chasing approval, stopped measuring my worth against their silence. And in that space, something shifted. I began to see my last name not as a chain, but as a choice. A choice I could carry proudly, regardless of who tried to take it from me. I started focusing on the people who did show up, friends who reminded me I wasn't defined by family politics, mentors who valued me for my work, not my lineage. Slowly, I built a new sense of belonging, one that wasn't tied to whether my sister thought I was worthy. Looking back, I realized her sentence didn't break me. It revealed me. It showed me that identity isn't handed down, it's claimed. And the truth is, a name doesn't define you. Your actions do. Families may try to weaponize shame, but at the end of the day, shame only sticks if you let it. So where do I stand now? I still carry my last name. Not because my family approves, but because I've decided it's mine. And that decision, more than anything, is what gave me peace. So that's the journey. One sentence on my birthday that spiraled into silence, reflection, research, and finally, resolution. And if you've ever had a moment where family words cut deeper than you expected, you know how heavy they can feel. But here's the truth. Those words don't have to define you. I want to thank you for staying with me through this story. Sharing something this personal isn't easy, but I believe stories like these matter because they open doors we usually keep shut. Families are complicated, and sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones we fight outside. They're the ones we fight at home. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been told something by your family that stuck with you? Maybe a sentence you'll never forget? Share it in the comments. Not just for me, but for everyone watching who might need to know they're not the only one carrying words like that. And if this video resonated with you, hit subscribe. Because this is the last story. We got more coming that dig into identity, resilience, and the hidden ways our lives are shaped by the people closest to us. At the end of the day, this isn't just about my last name. It's about reclaiming your story, no matter who tries to write it for you. Thanks for being here. It means more than you know.